Even drink Cristal on this one. Holla.
Hello, and welcome back to the Phases Podcast, the Unpopular genre. I'm your host, Nia. If you're new here, please be sure to hit the subscribe button as well as the notification bell to be aware of any new podcast episodes that I upload. And if you're a returning listener or viewer, you already know the vibes and how we get down. I don't know if anybody else is fighting with a fly in the home right now, but if you are, my condolences, because he gotta go. This fly gotta get up out of here, seriously. And I know you're closer to the edge as well, because this is craziness. When we asked for warmer weather, we didn't ask to be invaded with this either. So, guys, in this Phases episode today, we're going to be talking about body imperfections and a host of surrounding topics around that. So I wanted to start off this episode with having a transparency moment, right? About being bullied as a teenager. So when I was younger, I never really had too many issues with dealing with females teasing and bullying me. Like what? But when it did come to females, I was more so teased on clothing weight, oh, your sneakers, oh, your clothes, but it never really bothered me because I didn't really care. And I never was one that was introduced to the crazy wildness of designer and dressing and all that kind of stuff. So it actually even now being older, it's honestly was a blessing. But I feel out of all my siblings, I probably had the worst type of dressing to a certain extent. I ain't gonna do myself like that, but it was teasable for if that makes sense. So honestly, from females, that was the only realm of bullying that I dealt with. But when it came to guys, I was bullied really bad. Honestly, it might be even on some levels classified as something else because it was just really beyond unnecessary. But obviously, when you're younger, you don't even get to see it as what they're really doing versus what they are doing. Even though, you're being teased or, put on the spotlight about certain things, it's sometimes it's because, oh, they may like you or, oh, whatever. But you don't know that at the time. So that's kind of funny now. But yeah, I was bullied a lot for having big lips, being dark skinned, as well as being heavy chested. And the girlies don't have a safe space to talk about this, but we are opening up the chat room today about it. And I thought this was a really interesting conversation. I'm sorry, I'm a little annoyed because it's just so I thought we'd have an interesting topic. Conversation surrounding this. This is why. But I just remember multiple times in my life, being kind of singled out and teased or made these crazy remarks about whether it was how dark I was. And if I don't know really how it is nowadays because I'm not really in that age category, but I know before, in my time, being dark skinned was probably people treated it like it was the worst thing for some reason. And if you were of a lighter complexion, you was more known of that it girl aesthetic that they kind of try to call it now, but it's less, it's more diverse now than it was back in the day for sure. But yeah, I just remember so many instances of where you've had boys do all this Joe stuff, and it's just amazing being older now, really looking back at it. And I think for the longest time, I it took a while for me to embrace being chocolate, a dark skinned girl, growing up in the world, and I had pretty old school parents, so I don't even think they even understood, even if they took the time to understand. I don't even think they would have. But even when it came to just the over sexualizing of my lips and bosom, sorry, it sounds funny just saying it like that, but that was, I think, the hardest thing because honestly, I just started embracing my lips maybe a few years ago. We is not one to trip, especially once I had my son and just seen him on him. I'm like, oh girl, this is hereditary. You have to, embrace it for what it is. But it was it's not as bad as I used to think that it was for some reason. But I think it was just an insecurity that I made insecure because it was something I used to be teased about a lot. Other than that, I probably would not be insecure about it. Not to mention, it's a very hot commodity right now. So it's maybe this was something to be, blessed to have versus having to be like some who are out here trying to pay for the results. And even when it came to my complexion, though, I think I definitely embraced my dark skinness like a while ago because I really realized, I think it was just like, what are we talking about? Like, what are we talking about? I could say maybe like 4 years ago because I had a lot of, like, for a long time, I dealt with like insecurities, especially like in my late 20s, I mean, late teens, early 20s, like a lot of insecurities. So, like, about, like, yeah, like definitely a good 5 years ago, I started like really working on that a little bit, but it really came 10 times harder once I did my what do you want to call it, transformation type thing, like, yeah, that was about then. So yeah, it wasn't really until like a few years back when I like changed my whole entire life around that I started like embracing myself more, because what I realized then, and here's some skincare 101, your body really does display what's going on the inside externally. So when you're stressed and all the extras and it's off and out of whack, it very much does start pouring through your face and your pores, pouring through your pores, literally. Granted, you may have some people that can direct their stress in other ways, or may, can, I was very depressed around that time too, so people can channel that differently, and maybe they don't, it doesn't go to their face. But for me, it went to my skin, my face, my body, like the weight gain craziness. And I'm going to definitely drop some transparency photos, because I always embrace those, because I just look at myself then and be like, yo, the mindset that I was in now is nowhere close to where I am now. But just to think of like where I was at, and just to think I would never thought I would be here. And I do it on my eyebrows, but baby, don't play with the skin. If you know, you know. So a lot of things for me at a young age was just over sexualized, honestly. Like, made more than what it needed to be. And like I said, I never really had a conversation constructively about these things. So it did really play a huge role in this being a lasting insecurity until my mid 20s. Because you figure I'm moving to my late 20s. And I could say a good like 4 or 5 years ago, I just started like really coming full circle with these things. And if you, like I said, if you've been of the darker skin crew, you knew, especially coming up in my time, like you knew, like, unfortunately, we just wasn't favored, and we were very much made fun of in ways that just didn't need to be made fun of. And I honestly feel like that somewhat plays a part in this whole light skin, dark skin conversations that we have now on social media, because we didn't have social media then, so we weren't having that conversation. But it just emphasizes like why we might even have these conversations, these disgusting, mundane, dumb conversations about complexion, and we're all black, but that's neither here or there. But unfortunately, like, that's just unfortunately known to be like, if that aesthetic. I hate that that's really how it is, but unfortunately, we got to call it thing a thing. Even as you'll hear sometimes, side note, like you'll hear sometimes like creators, I often do because I do a lot of research on my playing field. And you will often hear creators talk a lot about like how much harder it is for our kinds of shades out here to even make it in a creative space, because we don't fit the what people would consider the it girl aesthetic, or like that general aesthetic being of a darker complexion. And there ain't nothing wrong with keeping it real about it, because not talking about it doesn't stop that this is still really happening as well. And I just think about like how many girls, especially dark skin, rather whatever you got going on, why they really may like not really love themselves, or not really, like this or that about themselves, let alone having lasting insecurities into our older years because they don't like these things, or they have yet to embrace them. And I could just feel like with that, it's so easy to be overly sexualized about a lot of things. And that's when it starts from like something that's being bullied, is from something you can't even control, but you grow up and you kind of start taking on these things mentally, like, oh, I don't even want to do anything. Like, I just started getting into my lip liners and stuff more about that same time frame too, because I was always like, I'm not trying to emphasize them any more than they are. I'm not trying to, but I see all the more so why I'm glad I let the insecurity go. because if you were a part of the big lip crew, like DSLs, like I hate even saying it because that shit used to really piss me off. Like, even just thinking about it, like, and what? Like, yo, that shit used to really tee me. Now I'm thinking about it. It's just really because it was just beyond unnecessary on so many levels. Sorry, guys, had to change the battery, but so we have a little bit of a change. So get me started. Y'all already know how I feel about this nonsense. So carrying on. And you have some women or some girls that have gone through, rather it's been teasing or catering to that rather they may have insecurities or they may, end up embracing it in a way that it may work well for them or against them. Especially if you're growing out with, I think we've all had somebody that's been, rather known to be curvy, for example. And those you have some that embrace themselves and hold themselves to a high standard and fare out pretty well. You may have some who, kind of it works against and they may become, a little bit more promiscuous or faster because they start like allowing that to go to their head. They're about using their body more of a attraction piece than anything else because they're used to getting so much attention around it. Like little things like that is how people end up over sexualizing themselves at a younger age, which end up following themselves into an older age. Just like people end up having insecurities about a lot of stuff at a younger age and end up being older having these same insecurities and still trying to figure out ways to manage or accept themselves for who they really are, especially if there's not like somebody in your life like balancing you out. You know what I'm saying? Rather you have these things and nobody's having a real conversation with you about, like, baby, you have this is how people are going to perceive you. This is how you may come off, especially to men. Like, not a lot of times people are even having those conversations, but some of you guys have had that conversation with you guys, or had that conversation with you, and you may not even understood it at the time, but maybe even hearing me say this now, it might be like, okay, I kind of could see probably what they was telling me, because the way it can be sometimes translated can be a completely different conversation. But I think the intention is always still pretty much the underlying thing. And like I said, insecurity for myself carried on until, not too long ago, a few years back. So it's so amazing, even when you think about people that are older, and still have that fight. It's so crazy how the world could just be and just how life is sometimes. And I used to remember like being younger and like, yo, when I not even younger, but I guess more so in my like young adult years, like seeing people get like little cosmetic work, and I'm like, especially on their lips, I'm like, why would you want to do that? You know what I'm saying? It's like being a little bit judgmental towards it, just the entire thought, but mainly stemming from an insecurity that I had. Not even realizing at that point, if people are trying to get bigger lips and you hate yours, what does that say? What should that tell you? What do you need to start embracing about yourself? But definitely once I see my son and just like, oh, like, okay, this is a thing. Like, this will be a hereditary thing if you have children. Like, across the border, everybody's gonna have the lips, okay? And then especially like once I started like loving and more with skincare, and that was a journey that just started maybe like 2 years ago. Even though like but like me, I started like loving my face more. Like in losing once I lost a little weight off of it too. Like it just added to the loving of it, which of course lessened any insecurity because I started just like embracing so many things more. And then wait till I show you guys the transformation pictures. Like I genuinely got my skin where it is, like, and it came from a time, honey. Oh my goodness, it came from a time. So even with that little slight lesson, even with me, judging something from a place of insecurity, kinda can help people to somewhat think about when people sometimes solicit their opinion to you. A lot of times people do give advice from an insecure state. And I really see that. Like adulting, nobody talks about the tea in adulting. Like the stuff that you see and be like, whoa, no one said nothing about this. Like I've been just on some whole other time seeing so many things in this life that is just mind boggling sometimes when you just think of like how individualized certain things really are. Like we think so many things are so harmonious, when really if we look at things on more of an individual circumstantial base, you really will learn so much more about the world, seriously. And that also just made me think about, this grand conversation we have about cosmetic surgery and BBLs and all this kind of stuff, right? Even to that last little thing. Some people are insecure about their bodies. So the only opinion that they are given about a BBL is one that is of non genuine anything. It's not genuine. It's mainly because you can't do it or don't want to do it or can do it. Um, and that's just something just to consider around the border. Like a lot of times if people can't do it themselves, chase their dreams, get the job they want, do what they want in life. When they can't do that, it's so much easier to just encourage somebody to not do it, even though the likelihood, people like to say, oh, the dangers and oh, da-da. It's global. Now, what I would say is make sure you're doing everything. One, intentional, but two, from a genuine space. I've seen some people go through the whole works of getting the BBL and still not even love themselves enough. Like nowadays, I'm sure you've kind of know because it's a lot more prevalent now because people are like out there with so much more now. But I'm quite sure, and if you're not, maybe look it up. How people could become addicted to it. I remember Insecure Child. Shout out to Issa. That's my girl. But I remember like an episode on there where this is like early Insecure. But when one of her friends, she was like addicted to getting the shots, the ass shots. You know what I'm saying? And she kept going back for that silicone, kept going back to that silicone. First of all, it was not only was it illegal, but you weren't even thinking about one, how ridiculous you're starting to look, but two, you were just like addicted to it. You became addicted to it, and I don't think people talk about that enough. Like people can get addicted to cosmetic surgery because they're never really, when you're doing it for the wrong reasons, you're never going to be really satisfied. If you're doing it for a man, if you're doing it because your ex cheated on you with somebody that looks like this, or oh, I don't really love myself fully and I can't, this insecurity of mine is really just I want to be more attractive, more appealing. When you're not doing it from the inside out, it will have those type of results where you're just constantly doing every and anything and you're working against your body versus for it, versus just getting to the root of why this is an insecurity in the first place. Because I personally feel like regardless if I agree with something somebody's doing, I don't get that stirred up about people's personal choices because I feel like we all come from and stem from so many different things. Like everybody's intentions and reasonings for doing something gets way too deep for me to even start to comprehend outside of my own expertise sometimes, unless, but it's like people's business is really their business. And it can be easy to just overstep and invade things that we just don't have any dealings with or don't need to have any dealings with, in all honesty. But that's a whole nother conversation for another day. And me personally, I just feel like if you are interested in that playing field, do your research. I remember I was one of my jobs, I worked as a medical assistant for a few years, but one of the specialties that I had worked in was primary care. So I remember we would have women come in there all the time, got they little surgery schedule and got to get that clearance paperwork done. That already shows the intention there because you had some women that really just trying to get past, for the sake of getting the surgery. And the whole time it's like, are you really healthy enough for this? So it's just like the desperation sometimes is very much plays a huge role. I have considered getting surgery before, but I also, definitely declined the offer off the strip, or not even the offer, but I just definitely just stop speaking that into existence because it's like I don't really want to. It's just that I'm finding like different imperfections that I may have that I don't like, but that can easily be fixed, honestly. And now after I had my son, I really am just glad that I've just embraced my body and everything on a completely different level. And that would be another thing I would say, like, wait till your lady yeah, what do they like? I forget what they really do call it, but I like to call it your lady curves. Like your body kind of starts doing its own kind of thing once. I can't even say just once you have kids, but definitely once you have kids, you know, your body definitely changes. It definitely plays a role on how you take care of yourself. It plays a role on how you take care of yourself. You know, that matters too, because not everybody, some people have gotten baby weight and never lost it, you know, but that's a whole nother conversation. But that's just an example, like, of why sometimes you gotta wait for what you know what you want and what's your intentions behind it. I know for me, I just wanted a nice little physique. You know, I've my weight and stuff has always kind of been important. I've been dancing since I was 4. So even like mainly, especially when I was a teenager in dance class all the time, like that was always like, okay, you must kind of stay, you know, in a certain weight and whatnot, and stay, you know, with your routine of stretching and just so many things to keep the maintenance up on your body. And now that I'm getting older, bro, I see that times 10, because even with me, I was very flexible. Like if you see me dancing before my son, you know. But after I had my son, it's like my hips and my thighs was like the hardest thing to loosen up. You know what I'm saying? It was just so much stiffness. Even now it's like, okay, I gotta take a little second to, you know, loosen up. But I need to know I also need to be sticking to a very strict routine of exercising as well as stretching. Because I'm getting older and I'm starting to realize, like, oh wow, we're not like rubber bands like we used to be. Like we have to really work for the rubber band now. So that has been a bit of a challenge in itself as well. But it just really just goes to show, like, but the results that I want, I know how I can go about getting them. You know, the gym is very much amazing too. You just have to know how to work those machines. And if you don't get a trainer, you know, I just don't think that the table has to be the end all be all. If that's what you're doing, do it. I never forget this girl. Her name is, I forget specifically how she says it. I think it's Sophiology or something. But Sophia, she is like a YouTuber that I'll be watching, but she stopped being as consistent. So it's like sometimes I'll pop in or not. But I remember before, like it was a big deal when she got what she liked to call the Christian BBL. I think it was honestly the name that sent the people in a disarray. But it was when she got a BBL, and she had got like so much controversy behind it. And people can be offer their opinions all day. You know, me personally, um, being a little bit more mature, I always said this is why I don't advise people to lead with their religious aesthetics on their platform sometimes, because it holds you to a level of accountability that is so unrealistic. Not to say that you don't share, but just to hold yourself in this one caliber can just be like, that's where you kind of set the tone, you know. So now you're getting the whole audience, and whole time you're human, you know, but that's neither here or there. But I remember she got a lot of criticism, you know, about it, you know, and how it was against God and all this kind of stuff. And my thing is, you know, I am sad that it kind of like wiped her, you know, back from wanting to be as consistent as she used to be. But I personally just feel like you really got to just mind your business sometimes. Like, you know, like it's people's personal opinions should not really, people are never going to stop giving their personal opinions. That's why you have to not take them personal. If you know what you're doing is like what you should be doing, then move guiltless. You know what I'm saying? Like a lot of times you make people build insecurities off things they feel like they shouldn't do because what they feel or was told, or, you know, God is the only judge at the end of the day. And I really mean that. And if people only really knew how much sin is just a line, flat line across the border, it's like, bro, please stop playing. Like, what are we talking about? Practice, you know? So when it comes to like being petty and stuff like that, like, no, I don't really engage in that kind of controversial stuff because it's so low vibrational. Like, why does people's personal opinions really matter to you? You know, if you're not personally doing it. Granted, I think she looks amazing, you know, and if that was what she wanted to do to make herself feel better, and if it's working for her, then it's going to work for her, just like any other body. I've seen a lot of older women, especially that come into my job, that have gotten it done. And honestly, you wouldn't even be able to tell. Not everybody is a Dr. Miamier, because I think that's a popular one. You have some decent, or let's just say less popular surgeons, that are out there that people have, investigated and, researched and have gotten far with. So we can't even say, oh, it's always a life or death matter, because it's not. You can die sitting on your porch, or eating a peanut. Seriously, like, it's not, doesn't really take you doing something that's drastic, but at the same time, because these are measures that you need to consider when getting a surgery, is definitely important for you to consider the life and death effects of it, for sure. But people just be meddling. Honestly, bro. And I've considered breast reduction surgery quite a few times. Honestly, it only brings me back to remembering it when the winter time hits. Because it's just like, I can't go on like this. And I just remember, like, talking to my boyfriend before, and he just was like, you think having little boobs is going to make you a better dancer? Like, I really do. Because if you are part of the dance community, like, what I'm talking about, right? But even more so with the breast reduction, my back. It's not like I'm saying, oh, I want smaller boobs. Even people like, what? Smaller boobs? Like, yeah, if you've been a triple D for plus years, I'm sure you've been considering it too. Like, that, it's all cute until it's not. Like, even when people talk about, I'm getting my boobs done. Once again, it's not an insecurity of mine. So I'm not going to say, oh, because I can understand when people are maybe more of a flat chested nature, what that could do to them. But now I'm ready to do it. But the recovery process is really the ultimate, thing, because it's at a point, like, even if I do lose the weight, which I have, you still got the results of it. And if you know. And especially, like, after I had kids, it was just like, yeah, it might be time to, like, take it down a notch. So that is one thing I have been considering myself. So I am not completely against it, And people will kind of say, oh, that God is the best of all players. And he knows. Like, that's why you leave things to God to judge. Because if anybody was to sit up there and try to tell me get a breast reduction is wrong, then you need to really mind your business. Because this is really for a medical thing. But I digress, But that's why I'm just saying, like, you really just have to lead with your own discernment and your own judgment. Everybody has their jurisdictions about what you should be doing here, should be doing there, shouldn't be doing here, shouldn't be doing here, shouldn't be doing there. You have to lead by your own jurisdictions and figure out what you want to do with your life and what's best for you at the end of the day. Nobody will ever be able to make a decision for you, or be accountable for any decision you make but you. Okay. So, in conclusion, love yourself, really get to the root of what your problem is. Make sure that anything that you do, you're moving with intentions and being genuine and authentic and doing what's best for you at the end of the day. And if you are of a spiritual nature, which I highly recommend that you be, not in a way that maybe the world, or I can't even say the world, but the way people do publicize it, or the way that society may be when it comes to God and thinking that you have to have this perfect, ideal relationship. Like, what does that even sound like? Your whole existence is a matter of this creation, and you think you have to be perfect at something? A story for another day. I just feel like once you're accountable to that extent, a lot of decisions you make will be more authentic, because you're going to start questioning yourself. Like, I have more of those type of moments, you know what I'm saying, with yourself. And it all comes, that's why I always say God is the best of all planners, because we don't know what's going on in people's lives. We don't know what nobody's dealing with personally. And if we are concerned with the many, many, many things we need to be concerned with in our own lives, we won't even have the time to worry about other things that don't have anything to do with us. And I'm going to always push that on my platform, y'all, because it's just like, it's so easy to get caught up in a bunch of things. We really know what's going on in the world today. Like, I don't know. But nonetheless, thank you guys for tuning in for another episode. Again, please be sure to stay connected by, staying up to date with me. I also believe I've obviously dropped my socials before, but please be sure to follow me on my socials, so we can stay connected and linked in. And without any further ado, I'll see you in the next video.
Drink Cristal on this one. Holla.